Good afternoon, my name is Anson Smith. I'm the boys head coach at Hunterdon Central Regional High School in Flemington, New Jersey. I'm also a member of the United Soccer Coaches Advocacy Council. Today it is my great pleasure to introduce my friend, Pete Urick. Pete has been a successful high school coach as both an assistant and head coach. He is presently an assistant coach at Drew University in New Jersey. For over a decade, I've watched as he has helped players, coaches, and teams find the qualities within themselves to achieve greatness. His extensive knowledge and experience as a coach, both of sport and of life, shines through in each and every one of his presentations. Today, he'll be speaking to you on the subject of his latest book, Soccer, Life, and Balance. I have the pleasure to introduce Pete Urick.
Thanks. Round of applause. First of all, guys, thank you for coming. I truly appreciate it. This is, as I was telling a few of the other guys, this is probably my 10th convention in a row, so I'm here often, and it's actually Anson that 5 years ago said to me, you should really speak at the convention, and so I was able to put myself onto the docket for this year, and I'm extremely excited to be here. This is just a list of the different roles that I've had in soccer over the past 35 years since I've been involved. And the whole entire thing is this is the reason why my wife refers to herself as the soccer widow, because of the fact that I've had so many different roles over the years and doing so many different things. But ultimately, I'm here not about myself. I'm here to talk to you guys about things that can help you, your teams, your club, your players. So, over the past 35 years as I've been involved with soccer, soccer has changed quite a bit. The youth game has always been the driver of soccer in America. The professional game has obviously taken huge strides forward in the past decade especially, but in the end, youth soccer has really been the driving force behind what goes on in the United States with regards to soccer. At that same time as soccer has developed as a youth game, it's coincided with the decline of value-based organizations over the past decade, especially the Boy Scouts of America and the Girl Scouts of America in the last 20 years, that those types of organizations have gone on the downside while soccer clubs and soccer participation seems to just keep going up. And as we go into the next decade of the 2020s, I think it's going to be extremely important for soccer clubs to prove an ROI, a return on investment, because of the fact that we're putting so much money into soccer and the play on the weekends. We want to make sure at all times that we're giving a return on investment for our families that are putting in so much money. So as we move forward into this next decade, I think that it's going to be incumbent upon the soccer clubs to start to prove more of an ROI, more than just, I've taught your kid how to kick a ball. I think that those values are going to become more important as we move forward. Just a quick little overview of Soccer Life Balance overall. If you've not read the book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why, I would suggest it heavily because of the fact that it gives you a focus on why you're doing things and how that is important. Now, for me particularly, my why for writing this book and presenting today is all about giving back. I've received so much from the game, and I've been able to do so many things through the game that I really feel a necessity to give back to the sport of soccer. Because of the fact that I've received so much, I want to make sure that I'm giving back, especially to the youth. In my overall purpose, who I am as a person, if you break it down into my core, I'm all about helping people, and especially young people, usually trying to make them better people overall. Well, what am I going to do? Well, the next step is I want to bend the club culture in an additive way. I don't think that we should give up on the idea of making our kids better soccer players, but ultimately what I want to do is I want to do it in an additive way. I want to add an extra element to the club game, rather than us just worrying about whether or not we can shoot the ball correctly and pass the ball correctly. Using the culture of the club in order to create better people. out in the world. Now, you probably heard the word culture a bunch of times over the past few days. The best definition that I've ever heard of culture is people like us do things like this. People like us do things like this. So there's all kinds of cultural references that we can talk about, but in the end, culture is all about who we are and what we do. And finally, the word how. How do I plan to do this? Well, I want to introduce life concepts through the lens of soccer to possibly have those ideas invisibly influence lives. Now, I use the word invisibly because of the fact that culture can often take the shape of doing things without even recognizing why you are doing them. Now, I'm just going to ask for a quick show of hands. How many of you had a tree in your house during the holiday season? 100%. I am almost positive, even a small group, I'm not going to ask the question, but there's not one of you probably that did it because of the Festival of Saturnalia or because of the winter solstice. But those are the reasons why the pagans who originally started that process used to do it. They used to bring trees into their house to remind them of the spring that was coming. It had nothing to do with Christmas whatsoever. So the fact that you guys brought a tree into your house and you have no idea about the history of it and you're not doing it because of the historical reason why it started, that's what culture is. It gets us to do things without even thinking about why we're doing them. It just has us do them. So I want to try and bend soccer culture just a little bit by adding a little bit more to it. And that'll get it. Maybe. There we go. The first concept, and I'm going to speak completely in metaphors. If you ever look at my website, I write a blog on a relatively regular basis. I'm almost always speaking in metaphors. And I apologize if the internet isn't working very well. I'll just skip over the video, but we'll see if we can get it. Most of you guys will probably recognize this anyway. There we go. And if the internet doesn't work, we'll just skip over it.
Trying to torture me here?
I'm not trying to torture anybody. I know that not everybody loves Cristiano Ronaldo or Spain or
At this
Portugal.
moment.
Yeah. Now I'm sure that most of us saw that live or pretty darn close to it. The whole entire thing is the skill that most people are going to focus on right there is the striking of the ball. That perfect bend on the ball to get it around the wall and put it into the net right past the keeper. Now for me personally, I'm looking at a totally different skill. I'm looking at the 5 or 6 breaths that Cristiano Ronaldo takes before he strikes the ball. Because what he's doing there is he's using his breath in order to take himself from the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic. Now, if you've never heard those words before, basically the usual way that you hear it is the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight response. You are in a highly emotional state and you're trying to take yourself from that highly emotional state where you want to either run or fight, and you're putting yourself into the rest and digest. I'm going to be calm about this whole entire thing so that I can focus on what it is that I need to do at that moment. Now, the introduction of this whole entire concept is a relatively straightforward process when you're talking about dealing with young people. I don't need to show my 13-year-old son how to meditate and how to spend time being mindful, all right? Although that's something that I've gotten a bunch of benefits from over the past 4 years as I started to do it, I recognize the fact that what he cares about is he cares about soccer and being a person who is an influential person on the field. So taking this video clip and showing it to a young person and saying, here's what we're going to do. We're going to practice free kicks or penalty kicks. But what I want you guys to do is, prior to taking the kick, I want you to take 3 or 4 or 5 breaths in order to get yourself into the right state of mind. Now the thing is the kids aren't going to recognize the fact that they're going from the sympathetic into the parasympathetic. They don't need to know any of that. They know that one of the best players in the world does that on a regular basis. And I wasn't at any of the practices that Cristiano Ronaldo had in the lead up to the World Cup, but I can almost guarantee that he did the breaths at practice as well, because of the fact that he wanted to create that mental framework in order to get there. So introducing this idea to young people, they don't care about the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic. All they care about is the best player in the world does this, I'm going to start doing it too. And you start it out by doing it with free kicks or penalty kicks. And then eventually what you start doing is you start making a breathing practice at the club where we just had a goal scored against us. We are in a negative mindset at the moment. We need to retake control over our mental focus. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to do that breathing practice that we've been doing with the penalty kicks and things, and I want to extend it onto this particular moment. And as we use this more and more, the kids are going to start using it on their own, and not just on the field, but at home, in school, in this hyper-stimulated world where we've got so many different things coming at us at every single moment, and so many things are emotionally charged. The ability to get yourself from that response of, I want to run away, versus I'm focused and I know exactly what it is that I want to do, that is a useful skill. Now I'm going to start off with a video on this one, because I just absolutely love this. If I can get the cursor to work. There we go. And again, if the video doesn't work, I apologize. Sound on this part. Let's see if it'll work. Nope, the sound's not going to work for me this time. Okay, the sound doesn't really matter too much. It's just got some music in the background. Now, if you've never seen this guy before, there's another guy as well. His name is Nico Vicario, I believe it is. Vicario, that is a one-legged soccer player in the United States that played for his high school team and now plays for the national team. I forget exactly what it's called. I think it's like the Paralympic national team. But I can't even do this stuff with two legs, and this guy's hitting the crossbar on a regular basis. I'm holding on for the last. This is the one that I really like. Okay, so he's obviously an impressive individual, making an ability out of his possible disability. And I think there's one more. Yep. Here it comes. Oh, that wasn't the one. Okay. All right. Now, the whole entire thing is okay. The concept that I'm doing here, again, speaking in metaphors at all times, is lining the field. Us as coaches, every single practice, we are lining the field, whether we're doing it with the actual 11v11 game, or we are setting out cones to set out the boundaries for our teams and our players. Now, if you get nothing else from my talk, one piece of action that I'm going to suggest that you take is you listen to, if you go onto YouTube and type in David Foster Wallace, "This is Water." Take 19 minutes to watch the video. There's one that has two little fish at the beginning of it. Totally worth your time, 19 minutes. All right. And basically, the start of that talk, David Foster Wallace, it's from a from a graduation speech that he gave. And he starts it off by talking about there's two young fish swimming along in the ocean, and there's an older fish swimming in the opposite direction. And the older fish gets up to the young fish and he says to the young fish, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim a little bit farther along and they look at each other and say, "What the hell's water?" Now the whole entire thing is the fish is the last one to recognize that it's in water. Because it's so pervasive, it's so all around them, they never recognize the fact that they are surrounded by water. We had to discover gravity, we had to discover air. There's all kinds of things that we have around us that we never even notice that they're there. And each and every one of us has our own version of water. We look at the world in a particular way because of the way we were raised, because of the way that we think, because of the way that we do things on a daily basis. We have our own water, our own belief systems about what we are capable of and what we're not capable of. So having limiting beliefs about what you can and cannot do is something that is pervasive with our young people. They believe that they can't because of the fact that they often have never tried. And identifying limiting beliefs is one of my next concepts that I would suggest that you try and take back to your club. Now, the way that I usually introduce it is using the non-dominant foot. Usually, for most people, it's the left foot, but non-dominant nonetheless. And the thing is most of your players are going to tell you, "I can't kick with my left foot. I can't." And that word, "can't," informs the way that they view their entire skill set. And then, if we can, as the adults in the situation, take them and systematically, either you do it with juggling or some other kind of measurable skill, something that's subjective or objective so that you know for sure that they've improved. Juggling, distance of how far they can kick the ball with their non-dominant foot, accuracy of passing, those types of things, so that they get the idea that through systematic breakdown of that particular skill, they can actually get better at it and maybe even get to the point where their non-dominant foot is equally as good as their dominant foot. And recognizing the fact that that can then be broken up to other areas of their particular situation. Believing in themselves on that small thing, then we can take it to the next level of what are the other things that you think that you're not capable of, so that we can hopefully over time break them down and overcome them. Putting on the jersey. Now there's some jerseys in this world that are so recognizable that no matter what, you can see them and know what team you're talking about. Barcelona is one that jumps to mind. Manchester United, Chelsea, unfortunately, and Man City. Those are all ones that are really, really recognizable. You see somebody walking down the street, you know that it's that jersey before they even get within 100 yards of you. The thing is you probably have your own jerseys for your own club. You recognize them from a distance, but putting on the jersey is all about recognizing who someone is. Now, at your club, have you ever developed a belief structure? And what I'm going to say here might sound a little bit strange, but if you were at a tournament and you were walking looking for your team, you could probably recognize them based on the color of your jerseys, okay? Unfortunately, we all wear Adidas, Nike, or Puma, but that's neither here nor there. So you could probably get them from a distance. But could you recognize your players by the way that they act? If you were looking from a 100-yard distance, could you recognize your players based on the way that they act? If all of the colors were the same, could you recognize your kids based on how they treat other people, how they deal with adults, how they talk to each other, how they warm up? Those types of things are key because of the fact that putting on the jersey is all about representing yourself well. Now, I always think of clubs, communities, schools, teams as one-room schoolhouses. Hundreds of years ago, we had usually one schoolhouse in a community, and it was usually one room with one teacher, and basically the teacher would end up teaching the older kids. The older kids would have a slight responsibility to teach the younger kids. And that's the way that most communities, most teams work. Whether we do it knowingly or not, the young people are going to be taught by the older kids. So I'm going to suggest that within your club that you should have some kind of a mentoring program so that hopefully your older kids are going to influence your younger kids. They're going to do it either indirectly or directly. And bringing somebody in as a guest speaker possibly that you could use as a model for who it is that you want your players to be. Now, it doesn't need to particularly be, depending on the age group that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with high school kids, yes, absolutely. It would be great for you to get in a college kid, or maybe a professional player, or a college coach that they can look up to. But the thing is with the youngest group, they're going to look up to high school kids or middle school kids. So if you got kids that are in your club that are already exemplifying what your club is all about, then you're going to have a much better chance of instilling that culture with the younger kids as you have the older kids embody it in front of them. So having some kind of a mentoring program where the high school kids are mentoring the U9 team, et cetera, kind of a buddy system. And breaking it down, how do we at this particular club act? What are the things that we do? What are the things that we value? How do we treat referees? How do we treat parents? How do we treat opponents? And what is it that we want out of this whole entire thing? Soccer is about kicking a ball for sure, but it's the things that we do when we're not kicking the ball that are actually going to take us farther in life. The next step is assembling a team. Now, this is going to be one that I'm going to kind of pull from two different directions on this one, and that's what happens a lot of times with these more difficult concepts, is you have two different extremes that you're trying to find the right balance within, and that's one of the difficult things that we have to do as the adults in this situation. And I'm going to suggest that you should try having a fantasy soccer competition within your club or your team. All right. Now, with the numbers of clubs, the numbers might just get too high. So you might have to do it at a team level. But fantasy soccer is a competition that we usually do online, and I would just set it up and just let it go for about a month. For about a month, I would take the back seat and just look at players, getting scores, figuring out when to drop a player, when to pick up a new player, free agency, and all that stuff. Your kids are relatively tech savvy usually, so they're going to figure that stuff out probably quicker than we will. But after you've spent about a month of letting them just do it on their own, take a little bit of time within your teams, within your club, to have a little bit of a fantasy player evaluation. Who are the players who are getting you the most points? Who are the players who are getting you the least points? Why is that important? And continue to have them reflect on what players are valuable and for what reasons. Now, the question I ask is, then eventually figure out who are the professional players that they actually would want to play with. I use the picture of Mr. Suarez over there because he's got a huge upside as a player. His abilities on the field are a huge upside, but who he is as a person sometimes leaves you a little bit open to some problems, okay? You might have some issues where he's trying to bite another player. And is that somebody that you want on your team, in your club, etc.? Now, this might take a season in order for you to have these discussions over and over again. Look, the younger players are actually watching way more soccer than we ever did when I was a kid. But the whole entire thing is have them look at who are the players that you would want to play with, and then who are the players would you not want to play with. Even though you know they're talented, who would you not want to particularly play with? Now, the eventual place where I want to go, and it's a difficult discussion to have, depending on the age group, you might not want to go with it right away, but eventually going into a friend inventory. Taking a look at who are the people that you surround yourself with on a regular basis. It's said often that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And if that's true, then you want to be extremely selective about who those 5 people are. Now, in the beginning, when our kids are young, they don't have a lot of choice on the people that they're spending their time with. It's mostly parents, friends at school, etc., that they don't have to have the ability to pick. But as our kids get older and older, the eventual thing is thinking about who it is that you're going to spend your time with. Who is it that you're going to allow to influence you? Because of the fact that eventually that is going to influence you either directly or indirectly. So are you choosing your friends by chance or by choice? And making sure that we're taking that accountability to actually recognize whether or not we're doing a good job there. And there we go. Now the final piece that I'm going to mention in the metaphor component is probably the one that's most recognizable to you guys, that you've probably done 100 times at your club or at your team, is the idea of anchoring the goals. The idea of anchoring the goals is basically all about us setting up the direction that we want to take. And for years now, I've been doing goal setting workshops. Now, basically, you want to probably have somebody who's done a goal setting workshop before, but the three major components that I try to put into any of my goal setting workshops is, number one is you need to have a goal that's measurable. Okay? You need to be able to know when you've actually hit the goal or not. So if you're in a situation where your players say, have a goal of, well, I want to be a better player. Well, that's not really a goal, because you're never quite sure whether or not you've hit it. But if you want to score 10 goals this season, that's measurable. You're able to figure out whether or not you've done that thing or not. Now, the second part to my goal setting workshop is usually the why. Why do you want that goal? Why do you want to score 10 goals? Why do you want to win a state championship? If you have weak reasons why, you're never going to get through. Obviously, we just hit the New Year's resolution period of the year, and most people break their New Year's resolutions within the first month. And the reason usually is because they made that goal, but then they forgot to come up with all of the reasons why they wanted it. Recognizing the fact that that's going to be the thing that carries you through when things aren't going well. On the morning at 6 a.m. when you have to get up and go out for a run, the reason you're going to do it is because of the fact that you want to look good for your wedding, or you want to win a state championship, or whatever it is that your particular goal is for that thing. Recognizing that you have those reasons why. And then the final piece is the MAP, the massive action plan, the things that you're going to do, the big things and the small things that are going to carry you through. Try and exhaust as many of the little things that you can possibly do. Now, here's one of the things that I picked up in my very first convention that I ever went to. It was about 16 years ago. Basically, when you have set up the goals and everything like that, I usually set my paper into into the three sections. The what do I want, the why do I want it, and then how am I going to get there. Put it onto a half sheet of paper. Have the players write out their goals, why they want them, and then what they're going to do. Okay? And then hopefully you have the ability to get them laminated. Get that piece of paper laminated. And the reason why it becomes laminated is because what your players are going to do is they're going to roll it up into a tube like this and put it inside their cleat. So that every single time that they put on their cleats, they're looking at their goals. Because most of the time, why we fail at New Year's resolutions is because we make that New Year's resolution and then we forget about it. But if you put the goals into your cleat and you're looking at them every single time that you put that cleat on, you're much more likely to hit your goals because of the fact that you're getting a constant reminder, a daily reminder of what it is that you want, why you want it, and how you're going to get there. And the final piece of the anchoring the goals that I put in there is an accountability partner. Tell your goal to someone who is not going to let you off the hook. Somebody who is going to keep you honest when you are not doing what it is that you should be doing. And recognizing the fact that this might not be something that you do with a young player, the U9s, the U10s, they're probably not going to need this. But high school players, absolutely. They're going to need to recognize the fact that people are going to hold you accountable, and you're going to need to hold your accountability partner accountable as well, so that eventually when you guys hit your goals, it's a group celebration. Now, the reason why I wrote this book, the reason why I am speaking here today, and the reason why I basically get into soccer at all is because of the fact that soccer is the best metaphor. I think that soccer is absolutely the best metaphor for what it is to be alive. You have the things that you want out in front of you, and you are part of a community, a small group of people that are trying to move forward toward that goal. And there's nobody calling a play. There's nobody telling you exactly what it is that you need to do. You've got principles that you believe in, but generally speaking, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. And whether or not you move forward is based on the decisions of that small group of people that you deal with on a regular basis. And while you're trying to move forward, you're also trying to protect that which is behind you. You're trying to protect things. Possibly it's your self-esteem or the way that you feel about yourself. But recognizing the fact that we are at all times heading forward, but also trying not to get scored on at our back. Soccer is by far, and I believe that that is why it is the most popular sport in the world, is because of the fact that people understand that this is what it's like to be alive. It's all emotionally charged, and it's one of the best things about soccer is the fact that we are doing skills that we have done 100 times over. But the thing is, we're doing it in a emotionally stressed position. We are under emotional duress, and it's whether or not we can control those emotions and do those skills on a regular basis, on a consistent basis, that decide whether or not we're going to be successful or not successful. And that idea of success is a slippery slope for most people, because I'm going to tell you right now, as a coach, as somebody who deals with kids all the time, I need you to recognize that success and winning are not the same thing. Success and winning are not the same thing, and failure and losing are not the same thing. Because of the fact that if my son's U13 team goes out and plays against Barcelona and lose 1-0, they were extremely successful. But if they go and play my daughter's U9 team and they lose, or they win 1-0, then they were not successful. So recognizing that fact that success and winning are not the same thing, and recognizing that for your players so that you can set the game up for them to be successful by taking the goals that they have in front of them and making sure that they are always recognizing what is success and what is failure. Because most of the time, your players are not going to be in a situation where it's as definitive as a game. Success and failure in life is so much more complex and so much more convoluted that we need to get them used to in this very structured environment, giving them the ability to see life in a very structured environment so that when they get off of the field, they can actually have success in other areas. And all of these concepts, and this is only a handful of the ones that I cover in the book, but basically all of these concepts are extremely relatable to what you do when you are outside the lines. And I personally, I have gotten so much out of the game, and none of it has to do with kicking a ball. Every once in a while, I drop a glass or I drop a glass bottle, and I save it by using my foot. That's the only way that my soccer skills have really gotten me anywhere when I'm talking about my ability to kick. But everything else that I've gotten, my ability to stand up in front of a group of people that I don't know and talk, that confidence that I've got, the leadership abilities that I've picked up, all of that comes from soccer, and it has nothing to do with kicking a ball. So if we are in this room trying to make our kids better at kicking the ball, that's fine for the short term, but eventually we need to recognize that 99% of our players are never going to play professionally, they're never going to play as Division I college athletes, so then what are we doing? We are getting them ready for life, and if we do a good job of that, when we are in the lines, they are going to be that much better when they are outside the lines. So, I'm happy to take questions. I know this is a little bit blurry, but my website is soccerlifebalance.com, and my email address is up there as well. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to field them if you have anything. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. I really appreciate you coming to listen to the talk, and enjoy the rest of the convention. Thanks.